You can have the best campaign idea in the world. You can have maps that took weeks to draw, histories written like textbooks, and characters with backstories longer than most novels. And none of that matters if you can't tell in a way that makes the table lean in. Having a story and telling a story are two completely different things. And that's where most of us get tripped up. We confuse the two. We think that if the story exists, if the prep is done, it'll tell itself. But the truth is, when it comes out of your mouth, it falls flat. And a lot of that comes from the lie that we've been fed. That storytelling belongs to the theater, people. To be a great DM, you need a background in acting. And that's about doing voices and sound effects. You know, we watch the professional DMs online and they tell us, or at least they indicate, it's the voice that sells it. What you need to learn, the art of performance. But that's all just gatekeeping. Every single bit of it. Because a great actor can carry bad writing. You know, they can take almost anything and make it believable, make it feel fun, exciting, or engaging. But great writing and a talented director can pull greatness from a mediocre actor or even a non-actor. And that's where we live as DMs and GMs. We're not auditioning for Broadway. We're directing, we're writing, and we're giving enough of the table so they can imagine. If the words are strong, the game carries itself, even if the players have no background in theater. And sure, voices are fun, but voices don't build tension. A funny accent doesn't make a ruined temple feel alive. So what does? It's the words you choose, the way that you describe something. That's the difference between running a session and running a session that people will never, ever forget. And that's what I want to dig into today, right here. This is episode 15 of my 20-part campaign mastery series. And it's not about gimmicks, and it's not about stage tricks. This is about the craft of words. And we're going to borrow from people who have mastered this. And they're not playwrights or screenwriters. And we don't have actors, or we don't need actors. But we're going to look at horror writers. We're going to look at three in particular. Dean Koontz, Stephen King, and Clive Barker. The ones that can take something simple like a doorway or a hallway, a shadow, and make your skin crawl just by describing it. And that's what you want at your table. That's what will make your world leave its mark. Chapter 1, The Lie of the Stage Voice. The problem is we've been told the same thing over and over. That to be a great DM, you've got to be a performer. You've got to treat your NPCs like it's an audition. Like the only way your table will care is if you stand up and wave your arms and put on a silly voice. Well, that's a lie. And it's a dangerous one. Because most people aren't actors. I'm not an actor. They sit down behind the screen and they think, well, I can't do 20 different voices or even one sound effect. So I guess I'll never be a great DM. And here's the thing, when you rely on voices to sell your world, you're leaning on the shallowest part of the craft. Because voices are temporary. Those accents, they actually get old. The joke wears thin. What doesn't wear thin is how you describe the spaces those voices are supposed to live in. You know, the ruined chapel, the marketplace at dawn, the way blood smells when it hits iron. And if you want proof, look at your players. They'll remember the way you describe the broken city gate and the smell of smoke in the streets. And they will also forget the funny goblin voice you do or the raspy innkeep. Because those voices are just theater. We want the storytelling that will stick with them. Think about it this way. The reason professional DMs lean so heavily on performance is because that's their background. That's what they know. They're actors first, game masters second. But when you're at the table, you're not competing with the actors. You're building something much closer to what looks like a book. Your job isn't to put on a show. It's to give enough detail that their imagination does all the rest and the heavy work. And that's the lie that a stage voice is. And once you see it, it's such a relief because it means that you don't have to fake trying to be an actor. You don't need to worry about your accents or your stage presence. All you need to do is learn how to put the right words in the right place. And that's where horror writers come in, because they know how to take a blank hallway, a half-open door, a dark forest, and make it unforgettable with nothing but words. Chapter 2, Why Horror Writers? So, if it isn't about learning how to be a performer, where do we look? If we're not actors, what should we study? And this is where most DMs get kind of stuck. They look to other DMs, they watch streams, they copy what they see, and it all starts circling the same drain: accents, improv, gimmicks. And that's not craft, that's just mimicry. And if you want to learn how to tell a story, you don't go to theater, you go to writers. You go to the people who built entire worlds and put them into your head with nothing but ink on the page. And out of all the writers you could learn from, the ones that can teach you the most about being a DM are horror writers. Not because your campaign has to be horror, but because they are the masters of one thing. And this is one thing every table needs: tension. Horror writers can take something ordinary and twist it. They make a locked door feel heavier than a dragon. They can take silence and make it roar. So why don't we look at somebody like Twain or Dickens or even Tolkien? Their genius was in humor and social commentary and grandeur and myth. Yes, brilliant writers, no question. But they are not going to train the muscles you need at the table. Tolkien can give you how to build a world, but he won't show you how to make a single locked door feel like it's daring the players to touch it. You don't need satire in the middle of a dungeon crawl. And you definitely don't need epic poetry either. You need the skill to make the players' hands tighten on their dice when you describe the air growing colder. Koontz, King, Barker, those are the teachers, because each of them approach fear very differently. Koontz gives you a sharp, clipped edges. King makes the familiar strange until you don't trust it anymore. And Barker, well, he drags you right into the grotesque. And it's so close you can feel it on your skin. That's craft we're after. That's the toolbox we're going to steal from. Because if they can make you terrified of a clown or a locked door or the shape in the fog, then you can use those same tricks to make your world alive for your players. Chapter 3, Dean Koontz, Surface Fear. Dean Koontz doesn't waste words. He writes like a camera lens, clean and sharp, moving you exactly where he wants you to see. He's not flowery, and he's not trying to impress you with his wide vocabulary. He's trying to hit you right in the gut, right now, with just enough detail that you can't look away, even if you wanted to. That's what makes him perfect for D&D. Because when you're describing the world of the table, you don't have time for 3 pages of lore or description. You've got 1 sentence, maybe 2, to make the players lean in. Koontz knows how to do that. He builds fear on the surface, not by dumping the monster on you, but pointing out what's just out of reach. A sound, a shadow, a detail that doesn't belong. He keeps the pacing tight and forward moving so you're never stuck. You're always chasing the next detail. Let's take something simple, a hallway in a dungeon. The plain version is the hallway stretches out in front of you. It's dark. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there's also no tension there either. Now, Koontz's vision would be more like the torchlight falls short. Beyond it, stone vanishes into the black. Something scuffles across the rock, quick and close. Then silence again. See how it's sharper? You're not just told it's dark, you're given a sound, a detail that makes the dark feel alive. That's Koontz. He's not dressing up the scene with a whole bunch of words. He's cutting it down to the part that makes your skin tighten. When you're running your game, think like Koontz. Don't tell them everything in the room. Give them the pieces that matter, the ones that make them want to lean in and ask, what else do we see? That's how you control pacing. That's how you build surface fear, fear of what's right in front of you, close enough to touch, but not clear enough to understand. Chapter 4, Stephen King, Familiar Fear. Stephen King does something very different. He doesn't start with the shadows or the movement. He starts with what you know, the ordinary, the everyday. A car, a small town, a family dinner, a child's toy. And then he tilts it just a little until it feels wrong. And that's where the fear comes from. That's why his horror hits so hard, because it isn't about monsters. Well, not really. It's about trust. You trust that the world around you makes sense. And King pulls that rug just a couple of inches out from underneath your feet. And suddenly you're not sure anymore. That's gold at the table. Because most D&D is built on familiar ground. Taverns, roads, villages, campfires. Even a crypt has certain expectations. The player already knows what those places feel like, or at least they should. They don't need you to explain every single inch. What you can do is take that trust, break it. Take a simple campfire. You could say the fire crackles, you're warm, the night is quiet. That's fine, that's great. But the King version is just a little different. The fire crackles, but the wood smells wrong, sharp and chemical, like it shouldn't burn that way. The night is too quiet. No crickets, no wind, just the fire popping in the dark. You didn't dump a monster on the table. You didn't even show them anything dangerous yet. But suddenly that fire feels wrong. That quiet feels heavy. You've tilted the familiar, and now your players are on edge. That's the King trick. He doesn't scare you with the unknown. He scares you with the thing you thought you knew best. He makes the safe place unsafe. The normal detail becomes just a little uncanny. And when you're running a game, lean on that. Take a tavern and make it a little too empty. Take a forest and make it just a little too still. And that door, make it look ordinary. Except the wood around it is wet, and they don't know why. Give them the familiar and twist it. And that's what makes your players grip their dice without even realizing it. Chapter 5, Clive Barker, Visceral Fear. Clive Barker doesn't deal in shadows or tilted normality. He drags you right up close and makes you feel it. His writing is lush and grotesque, at the same time beautiful, but in a way that makes your stomach twist. When Koontz points the camera on the edge of the dark and King takes the thing you trust and tilts it, Barker grabs you by the face and says, "Look, this is what it feels like when your world itself wants to crawl underneath your skin." And that's exactly why he belongs in your toolbox. Because when you describe monsters, wounds, transformations, or anything that should feel unnatural, Barker's style will make it land. He doesn't just say, "It's gross." He makes you feel it on your tongue, in your nose, in the pit of your stomach. Take the same dungeon hallway that we've been playing with. The plain version, the hallway is damp. Fine. But here's Barker's version. Moisture seeps from the wall, slick and gleaming, like the stone itself is sweating. When your hand brushes it, the wet clings too long, sticky, almost alive. That's the difference. You can't just picture it. You can feel it. Same with monsters. A stat block will tell you ghoul, medium-sized undead, attacks with claws and bites. But the Barker version is different. Its flesh strains when it moves, stretched too thin over bone. The skin doesn't tear, it ripples, as if it's waiting to. That makes your table squirm just a little bit in their seats. Not just seeing the monster, feeling it. Barker is how you turn a line of text in the monster manual into something that lingers after the dice stop rolling. He's not subtle. He's not pulling back like Koontz or King. He's leaning in, pressing against your senses, and that's exactly what makes his style powerful when you need it most. When you're at the table, save this style for the moments that matter. If you describe every hallway like Barker, your players will get numb to it. But when you drop it at the right time, when they finally see what's been stalking them, or when they crack open the coffin, that's when it sticks. Chapter 6, From Words to the Table. So how do we actually use this when you're running a game? Because theory is nice, But at the table, you've got 5 people staring at you, dice in hand, waiting for their next thing out of your mouth. And that's where this all starts to pay off. The trick is you don't have to pick just one style. You learn to swap between them depending on what the moment calls for. Koontz for sharp pacing, King for when you want to twist the normal, and Barker for when you want to make your players feel it in their gut. Let's use something simple, a door. Nothing fancy, just an iron door in a dungeon. The plain version is there's a heavy iron door ahead of you. This is great, but like using Barker's style too much, it becomes boring, common, and loses its effect. Now watch what happens when you filter the door through each of these 3 writers. Koontz. The iron is cold, sweating, as if the stone around it is leaking into the metal. You hear something shift on the other side. Quick, then gone. This is fast and clean, enough to push your players forward. King. The door looks normal, heavy iron, but the wood frame around it is wet, not dripping, not soaked, just damp, like it's been sweating, though you can't tell where the water is coming from. This takes the ordinary and turned it wrong. It makes your players second guess what they're seeing. And Barker. The door bulges in place, swollen like diseased flesh. The surface has bubbled. The iron warped. The metal sags in the frame as if it's rotting from the inside. And there's a lingering stench of death. That's a gut punch. The detail that makes everyone at the table recoil just a little. You don't have to use all 3, and definitely not every time. But knowing them gives you range. It means instead of saying there's a door, you can decide how that door feels. Do you want speed and tension? Do you want that uncanny wrongness? Or maybe just full-on grotesque? Or this time? This time it's just a door. That's the toolbox. That's what turns simple description into something that sticks. Chapter 7, The Art of Withholding. Too much description kills tension, just as fast as too little. If you dump the whole monster on the table in one go, if you describe every detail of the room down to the cobblestone, you don't leave any room for fear to breathe. Fear lives in the gap, in what you don't say. And that's where Koontz, King, Barker all meet in the middle. They each know how to hold back. They don't just throw the monster at you. They circle it. They let your imagination do most of the damage. Koontz will give you the scrape of claws before you see the thing that's made them. The shadow that cuts across the wall when nothing should be moving. He knows your mind will paint the rest. He also knows your mind will make it worse than he could. King doesn't start with the monster either. He starts with a detail that doesn't belong. A child's toy in the corner of a dungeon corridor, sticky and damp. You don't know why it's there. You don't know what it means, but it tilts the whole room off its axis just a little bit. He lets you gnaw at that one detail until it drives you forward. And Barker, he'll give you just the edge of the grotesque, not the whole picture. Glistening under a cloak, a wet breath in the silence, enough that your skin starts crawling because you don't want to see the rest, but you also can't stop yourself from imagining it. That's the real trick of storytelling at the table. You give them one solid hook, a sound, a smell, a glimpse, and then you stop. Don't explain it. Don't paint the whole canvas. Just leave enough blank space for their brains to do the work. Never tell them exactly what the monster is, even after it's done. Names make things familiar, makes them safe, and allows them to start cataloging all that information. Leave it nameless and let their minds chase it. Is it a ghoul? Is it a zombie? Or is it just a skeleton with scraps of flesh that refuse to rot away? Because the truth is, your players' imaginations are far crueler than you will ever be. You don't need to scare them with details. You just need to light the fuse and let them walk down that hallway, wondering what's waiting in the dark. Chapter 8, Walking the Crypt. Okay, we've talked about Koontz, we've talked about King and Barker as separate tools, but now I want to show you how they can all work together when you stack them. This is just an example. Normally, I wouldn't line them up in sequence like this because once you start creating patterns, the damage starts going away. Players catch on and the fear dulls. But for the sake of showing how each style shifts the same space, we're going to layer them here. And the point isn't to dump every trick at once, not in every room. It's to build tension step by step. First thing is to start with surface fear. Break the pattern with familiar fear, and then when it's time, push it into the grotesque. Each one carries the last forward. And that's how you make a single room feel like it's a whole big story in itself. So let's run it together. So I want you all to picture a small crypt. 3, maybe 4 chambers. It's not a very big one. Just enough space to breathe, just enough space to layer detail without it collapsing under its own weight. I want you to watch how the rooms change as we walk through it, shifting from Koontz to King and finally to Barker. All right, here we go. The stone door grinds open and cold air slides out, dry enough to make your tongue stick to your teeth. Torchlight barely reaches past the threshold. The chamber is cut clean, the lines sharp, shadows pressing in close. Every sound you make feels way too loud, like the silence is waiting to swallow it. At the far end of the room, coffins lean in neat rows against the wall. You expect to see them here in the crypt. Each one carries a mark carved deep into the wood, runes with spirals and crosses. Looks ordinary, almost ceremonial. All but one. Where the mark should be, the wood is splintered, clawed with deep scratches that cut across the smooth face. It's not unfinished, like it was forgotten, but it's defaced, like something didn't want that mark there. A missing symbol, that's all. But the longer you look at it, the worse it feels. The row is broken, the pattern spoiled, and your brain keeps circling back, whispering that the thing that ruined it might still be close by. You hear a sound from the far corner, and as you turn, you see a corridor that has collapsed years ago. And in the rubble, you see a coffin half buried in stone, its lid not shattered, but shoved aside. Lying on the stone floor, the wood cracked and damaged. The moment your torchlight catches the inside, something stirs. A shape jerks. Its chest heaves upwards, sitting up. A desperate gasp that takes in no air. The sound is dry, rattling like lungs that have forgotten what breathing means. The light clings to its body. Flesh pulled tight across bones, stretched so thin it gleams in the torchlight like wax about to split. The ribs press hard against the skin where the cloth has disintegrated. Every rise and fall, a sharp ridge threatening to tear through. Veins lace black and purple beneath the pale surface, twitching with each false breath. It isn't alive, but it remembers enough to pretend. So that's the difference. Having a story isn't enough. You've got to learn how to tell it. And telling it doesn't mean putting on a show or juggling accents or pretending you're an actor. It means learning how to use words with purpose. Koontz teaches us how to keep it sharp. King teaches us how to tilt the familiar until it feels wrong. And Barker teaches how to lean in close and make the players feel it in their skin. Layered together, those tools turn a simple room into an experience your players will never, ever forget. You don't have to use all of them. There's no set order. It isn't Koontz, then King, then Barker in some neat sequence. Sometimes it's King twice in a row. Sometimes it's Koontz back to King. Sometimes it's none of them. Sometimes it's just there's a heavy wooden door, plain and simple. This will freak them out because they're conditioned to expect more. The point isn't to follow a formula. It's to have the range when you need it. And here's where it connects to the next step. Because if you can make a room breathe with words, you can make combat hurt with the same tools. Too often, a fight at the table collapses into math. Roll to hit, subtract hit points, repeat. It's not tension, and it's not exciting. It's just bookkeeping. Combat should have weight. It should have cost, and it should leave the characters shaken, exhausted, scared, even if they win. So the next video, we're going to talk about combat and how to give it teeth and how to make every swing and every wound matter. And most of all, how to put the stakes back where they belong so that every fight feels like it could change everything. If you're part of the Warm Below, Our little Fluffy Spawn community, drop your favorite description in the comments. Show how you twist a room, a coffin, a door. Share what freaked your players out. And if you're new here, welcome to the Warm Below. This is where we dig into the guts of the game together and drag out the tools that make it alive.